again. Today I have a sketchbook flip through for you of this finished Strathmore watercolor sketchbook. In it there are a lot of samples of classes and watercolor workshops that I was taking to push myself and to relax and to not think. Just sort of fun non-work art that I think is really important and does end up contributing to your overall skills as an artist. The more sources that you absorb from or take from and learn from, the more unique your own individual style becomes and your own choices and your choice making when you're making art. So it's really valuable, no matter how trained you are, to continue to learn from other artists, and it might immediately filter into your own work, and it might just settle in you somewhere to emerge years later in a different form. So I'm all about continuing to study from other artists and practice their styles even when it's not something I'm interested in doing myself, because it all kind of blends together, it knits together to form your own individual way of making. Anyway, hang out and enjoy this tour. Okay, so this is the Strathmore watercolor sketchbook, and I don't know if I have the weight here of the paper, but it is very thick watercolor paper. The sticker on it says, "There is magic in all of us," and it just came in a sticker pack, and I thought there's a ton of florals in here, so that's why I chose to stick that one on this sketchbook. First page is not actually a watercolor page, it's just a nice thin piece of paper that they put between each of the watercolor pages. So you'll notice throughout I just use it to take notes and such. So this is just some notes on my essential minimalist palette, or my dream palette of watercolors, as inspired by Liz Steele's palette. The first page are some fruit illustrations. You can see the lovely blooming happening on this paper. A lot of these highlights were done after the fact in white gouache or in white jelly roll pen. So not necessarily traditional watercolor technique. That's okay though. This, I said, snapshot visual journal. Hot chocolate and marshmallows in my coffee before Sunday morning run, 24 degrees Fahrenheit. And a little quick sketch of two of my Lamy Safari fountain pens. Here's that thin divider page that I was telling you about. And this is a spring wreath. A lot of the pages in this sketchbook were done as workshop projects. So on Skillshare, for example, or just on YouTube, if I'm stuck or I'm drained, I still do a lot of painting that I don't consider work. It's play and it's sort of creative renewal or self-care. It's just something I do to recharge. So you'll see a lot of that in this book. I kept reaching for this book when I was experimenting with a bunch of classes. So my full-time job was quite draining at the time, and so this was my outlet. So this is after Jenna, Rainey. You can find a ton of her watercolor instructional videos on YouTube. There's another one. I noted that it was my own floral practice, so I don't think I was copying anybody with this one. Some notes on travel sketchbooks and spreads and layouts, because I was brainstorming a Skillshare class of my own, and you'll see more on that in a moment. This is like a leaf practice that turned into a bit of a wreath, sort of, a non-circular. And it's just layering these leaves over each other, some are wet on wet, and so you can see them bleeding in. And I was just really trying to get practice with how much of that bleed to achieve. It's this delicate balance between control and then play, letting the watercolor actually do something interesting and exciting. But sometimes when you let that happen, you can't control it, and the results are really varying. So that I remember this is one of those instances where I was trying to walk that line between control and not having control with the watercolor. More floral practice after Jenna Rainey and a divider piece. And then here we are into some of the watercolor beverage illustrations. This was for a class that I teach on Skillshare called probably watercolor beverage illustrations or watercolor beverages. I'm laughing at myself for forgetting what I called my own workshop. Anyway, in this workshop you can see we paint a Corona bottle, a daiquiri, a mojito, as well as a margarita and a glass of red wine. And on the side there you have my color testing, and we used different techniques for achieving these textures, different watercolor techniques. So you can hop over to Skillshare and check out that workshop if that interests you. If you're an urban sketcher or you're somebody who just takes your sketchbook with you like me all the time to cafes or bars or when you're traveling, getting a handle on the various shapes and how to make them three-dimensional and how to represent glass and things like that, that can really free you up to do a lot of sketching on the go. And I do walk you through the drawings of these beverages. So it's not just the painting. We go step by step through how to draw them first. This says floral practice. I didn't list whether or not I was copying someone, but to me it looks like Jenna Rainey's style, and I just used up every single square inch of that space practicing control and release and watercolor effects for florals. This is quite loose right here. It's not really my style. It's me learning how to do what other people do so that when I land on my own style, it's more informed and more skilled. So it's important to practice techniques and skills and styles that you're not even interested in using yourself in your work, just to stretch yourself and learn from it. These leaves are Jenna Rainey, and I have some more notes here just on the classes I've taught, notes on music I used for my workshop. This is part of a workshop I did called Imaginary Vacation, and this was the tropical spread that we did together. You can see it has a lot of different elements: stickers, writing, painting, still life and landscape elements. It's got a tab here. This is the Paris spread we do in the workshop. So we get to do several different places. So if you're only interested in the Paris, you don't have to do the tropical spread. You could just jump right to this one. Some stickers, a ticket from a Paris bus, some washi tape, lots of different journaling elements in that spread. So that's on Skillshare as well if you're interested. Here's some watercolor practice. I didn't take up the whole page, which is surprising because there's not a whole lot of pages in this book, as you'll see. This was done more recently. This is a lot more my style, just purely my own. A lot of messy, almost abstracted watercolor with some more defined thin and thick black ink pen elements. I was using both fountain pens and brush pens. They are waterproof, so it's just laying on the ink after I did the watercolor sketches of these river watercolor elements. More practice, sort of modern illustrative style leaves, so not realism, but more cutesy. And a wreath. This wreath is actually from a Skillshare class by Victoria Calderon. and she's just fabulous. I love her style. It's very controlled, very tight, and so it's kind of the opposite of some of the other styles I'm practicing in this book. Yeah, her technique is very, very interesting and very controlled. This was Irina Traskos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, sorry. Skillshare class on Mother's Day cards. So this one was from that, and there's another one coming up. This one right here is also Irina. There's her last name, Trzaskos. So those were both from a class she did on Skillshare. This is a Skillshare class by Nitin Singh. It was called Simple Watercolor Exercise. And my comments on this are that it was challenging, very different than how I normally work. And I can see that I overworked a lot. It doesn't have that really fresh, transparent, vibrant look that their work does. Mine is, you know, I still don't have that balance of water to pigment, and it just looks really heavy-handed. But this is a perfect example of what you want in your sketchbook. You want to learn, you want to mess up and keep going, and I'm not going to do anything, you know, like you're tempted to rip it out, right? Because I can see all of its shortcomings, but I like looking back and seeing where I was and knowing I will only continue to improve, and that if we don't make these ugly messes, we don't actually get to improve. This is the same artist, a class called Watercolor City Street Cafe, and already I feel better about the fluidity and light application on this. It gets a bit heavy in here, and I am certainly not good at sketchy watercolor people yet, but that's fine. Those are more traditional watercolor techniques and applications than I've never been trained with traditional watercolor, so I look forward to doing a lot more of those classes. This artist is fabulous. This is Teo Yichi, and this was a class on Skillshare about urban sketching, and he took us around some places in Singapore. And I just love his teaching style. He's very cheerful. He tackles really complex compositions and cityscapes, and I just felt so relaxed, and I had so much fun painting this along with him. And there was another cityscape in the same class, I believe. These are all on Skillshare. This is just my own sketch. It's not doing a class of any kind. I pulled this picture of New Orleans, I think, off of Pixabay, where I get a lot of images if I just really want to do a quick study and I don't want to dig through my own iPhone for photographs I took when I was in New Orleans years and years ago. You know, you fall into the spiral of looking through your own photographs. So sometimes it's better just to jump online, grab one of those ones that is copyright free, and then you can work from it. And I'm not, you know, making prints or selling this. I'm just using it as a resource to practice. This I found was overworked in terms of way too many pen lines, but it's still interesting. It's just very complex and busy. There's not a lot of breathing room in here. There's not a lot of negative space, right? It's all taken up with detail. All those little hatch marks, they kind of crowd the drawing. But I had fun doing it, and I like looking at it. It has a lot of character and gives me the feeling of being back in New Orleans for sure. Some floral practice. That looks to me just like Jenna Rainey. I didn't even have to write it down because that's what she paints on her YouTube. Here's that other Irina watercolor card. This is a painting of an olive branch. It's not entirely complete, but I just stopped here. This is how far I got when I had some friends over for coffee and drawing. And my friend brought a ceramic tray as a gift for me, and it had an olive branch on it. And so I just set the tray down and painted right from the image that was on that ceramic tray. So I was very inspired by that. And I actually one day will hopefully get a tattoo of an olive branch, just black and white. I have just black and white line tattoos on my arms, and so I'm hoping for an olive branch sometime in the future. Yeah, that's just plain watercolor. It looks like over a pencil drawing, so not my normal use of ink, but has a very soft effect. This was just play. This was practicing just mixing, keeping my colors pure, seeing what sort of wild combinations would happen when I dropped wet on wet. And then much, much later, so I did this, I think, during a meeting, I believe, when our school was doing online teaching. Some of our meetings were a bit long, and so I would listen for sure, I promise you, but I would be keeping my hands busy and doing something simple like this at the same time. Much later, I went in and started doodling all these little houses and buildings over top, just because the page itself was asking for something a little more fun and in the vein of just doodling. So these aren't based on any real buildings. I just did that, and this is the same thing. Just a way to play with color. If you're looking for sketchbook inspiration, this is a super easy thing to do when you're busy or you're doing something else, but you want to test out some watercolor. It can actually be really helpful later to look back. If there's something that happened that you really, really like, you get to kind of see which colors dominate other colors when you put them side by side. They're both wet. Certain pigments are stronger and they will push into other pigments, which I find fascinating. And other times it depends on, which one you laid down first, etc. This looks like the red was dropped, or something was dropped into that green to make it kind of bloom like that. But yeah, there's some real cool moments here to look at. Just looks like icicles or something like that. Anyway, I might still doodle on top of this. I just keep the sketchbook out and add to it now and then. But that takes us to the end. This was a little video on my TikTok, showed the progress of a little kind of fun mixed media sketch I did on here, and I ended up cutting it out to frame it, and it is for sale. And then sometimes I just stick people's business cards in my sketchbook. If they give me a business card and I have my sketchbook with me, I'll tape that in there with washi as a way not to lose them and keep my art connections going. So that is my Strathmore Magic Sketchbook. I hope you enjoyed this little walkthrough, and I hope that you enjoyed another sketchbook tour. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, and I hope to do some more of them soon. I've got quite a substantial pile of finished sketchbooks still off to the side. See you next time. Thanks for hanging out and watching this sketchbook tour. I hope you enjoyed it and got a little bit of a Skillshare commercial. I didn't realize how much of this sketchbook included Skillshare classes, my own and other people's. So there's your unofficial commercial to Skillshare. It's a great platform. This isn't sponsored. I'm raving about it because not only do I teach on that platform, but I clearly use it a lot to study from as well and learn new things from. Let me know in the comments what your favorite sketchbook tour of mine is. I'm just curious. I have a lot of different styles of sketchbooks. One that I'm really excited to bring to you soon is the sketchbook that I used doing one of Liz Steele's watercolor courses. So there's a ton of just practice, bad sketching in there for you to look at. I'm excited to share it with you soon. Until next time, thank you again for visiting and sharing with anybody you think might be interested in these videos. I appreciate you.